Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She said it like it was a scheduling update, not a sentence that split a marriage in half. We were standing in the kitchen, the lights too bright for a Tuesday night, the air thick with a scent from Bath and Body Works that suddenly felt young. She didn't look nervous. She didn't look guilty. She said maybe we should just be roommates for now. Space. Reset. Temporary. Corporate words. Clean edges. I didn't argue. I didn't ask what she meant. I just told her, calmly, that my roommates don't sleep in my bed. That was it. No raised voice. No drama. I watched her face register surprise, then irritation, then something close to relief. Like she'd finally gotten the permission she didn't want to ask for. I've spent my career as a building operations engineer. I deal in systems, access points, locks, contracts, and load limits. When something fails, it's never emotional. It's procedural. You isolate the problem. You shut it down. You prevent collateral damage. That's how my brain works. That night, something clicked into that same mode. She went quiet after that. Not angry. More like observant. Like she was measuring how much resistance there would be. There wasn't any. I went back to eating my dinner. A lukewarm Chick-fil-A sandwich I'd picked up on the way home because talking had started to feel like unpaid overtime. She scrolled her phone, the glow reflecting off the cabinets, already elsewhere. The thing about redefining roles is that someone always thinks they'll control the definition. She worked in internal communications. She was used to reframing tension as alignment and distance as strategy. I saw it as a change request. And change requests get logged, reviewed, and implemented exactly as written. Over the next few days, she leaned into the new arrangement. New clothes showed up from Old Navy, folded neatly, like a costume for a simpler life. She talked about independence, about how couples evolve. She slept closer to the edge of the bed, then started falling asleep on the couch with the Xbox humming in the background like white noise meant to erase the silence between us. What she didn't notice was what I was doing. I stopped sharing updates. I stopped syncing calendars. I stopped assuming. I began reviewing our lease the way I'd review any shared resource agreement. Late at night, while she laughed quietly at something on the screen, I opened eBay and started listing things that were mine but had somehow become ours. Tools, equipment, objects with weight and purpose. By the end of that week, the apartment already felt different, colder, more efficient, like a space between tenants. And somewhere below us, a door opened and closed more often than it used to. The first crack didn't come from her. It came from the building itself. I know how sounds travel through concrete and steel. I know which walls carry vibration and which ones swallow it. When you work with structures long enough, you stop hearing noise as background and start reading it as data. That's how I noticed the pattern from the floor below us. Late, irregular, a door opening, then not closing right away. Footsteps that didn't belong to any routine. She started adjusting her schedule that same week. Nothing dramatic, just small shifts. Later showers. Longer pauses before coming home. She said she was staying late to realign a team issue. She used that word twice in one sentence, like repetition would make it true. She didn't look at me when she said it. She didn't have to. She thought we were past accountability. One night, I came back earlier than expected. I'd skipped my usual Chick-fil-A stop and parked the truck without turning the radio off, just listening for a second before going inside. From the hallway, I could hear her voice through the door. Not talking, laughing. Short, careless laughs that don't check for who might hear them. When I walked in, she was already composed. Phone face down. Couch perfectly staged. Xbox paused mid-game like it had been waiting for an audience. She didn't rush to explain. She didn't need to. Roommates don't owe explanations. That was the rule she'd written. The next confirmation came from someone else. A guy I've known for years, another engineer in the building, mentioned in passing that the delivery guy downstairs had started asking odd questions. About schedules. About who lived where. About which units were usually empty in the evenings. He said it like gossip, like something amusing. I heard it like a diagnostic alarm. The neighbor wasn't impressive. I'd seen him around. Hoodie. Backpack. No eye contact. Always nearby. Always available. He wasn't competing with me. He was replacing silence with presence. Replacing conversation with proximity. That's how these things happen when people are tired of words. That night, she burned a new candle from Bath and Body Works. Something sweet, aggressive, meant to overwrite whatever had been there before. I watched the flame instead of her face. Fire behaves honestly. It consumes what it's given and leaves nothing confused behind. I didn't confront her. I didn't change my tone. I just stopped sleeping in the bed. I took my pillow and moved to the spare room without a comment. When she noticed, hours later, she didn't follow. She didn't ask. She adjusted. That was her skill. By the end of the week, I wasn't guessing anymore. I was confirming. Confirmation doesn't arrive all at once. It stacks, quietly, like weight added to a structure until the stress points finally show themselves. I stopped asking questions and started paying attention to systems. Shared accounts, access logs, patterns, not in a dramatic way. In the same way I audit mechanical rooms and emergency exits. You don't accuse a building of failure. You verify. Our expenses told the story first. Small charges that didn't belong to us as a couple anymore. Late-night coffee runs that weren't on her usual route. A ride credit used when her car was still in the garage. I didn't bring it up. I just separated the accounts, cleanly, the way you isolate circuits during maintenance. No sparks. No blackout. Just control restored. She didn't notice right away. She was busy redefining herself. She'd come home with more Old Navy bags, talking about decluttering her life, while leaving everything emotionally scattered. She'd sit on the couch with the Xbox running in the background, controller untouched, just noise filling the space where conversation used to be. When she laughed at her phone, she angled the screen away without thinking. Habit is always more honest than intention. I began sleeping on a stricter schedule. Early mornings. Early departures. I took the truck out before sunrise one day, finally saying the name out loud to myself when I registered the mileage log. Dodge Ram. Heavy. Reliable. Built for work, not negotiation. After that, it was just the truck again. Names only matter once. From the parking lot, I could see the delivery guy's routine too. Same hoodie. Same backpack. Same door downstairs. He came and went without rhythm, which meant he was syncing to someone else's availability, not to a job. One evening, I came home to find the apartment too quiet. No candle, no background noise. Her shoes were gone. Not all of them. Just the ones she wore when she didn't plan on staying. I reheated leftovers and ate alone, noticing how easy it was to breathe without explaining anything to anyone. Later that night, I opened eBay again. This time, it wasn't just objects. It was space. I listed the extra desk, the shelving unit she never used but insisted we needed. With every listing, the apartment felt less shared and more defined. When she came back after midnight, she moved carefully, like someone entering a place that no longer fully belonged to them. She paused outside the spare room door. She didn't knock. She went to the shower instead, washing off a version of herself she didn't want me to see. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, already drafting the next step. Not emotionally. Procedurally. She thought we were roommates. I was already acting like a landlord. I didn't announce the shift. I just implemented it. By Monday, the apartment was running on a different protocol. I rerouted my mornings so we didn't overlap. Earlier alarms. Quieter exits. I stopped leaving notes, stopped sending check-in texts, stopped adjusting my pace to match hers. When people say someone disappeared, what they really mean is that access was revoked. She noticed it in fragments. Missed cues. Doors closing sooner than expected. My coffee mug no longer on the counter. The spare room locked when she tried the handle, like a boundary she hadn't realized was now enforced. She asked once, casually, if I was avoiding her. I told her roommates don't coordinate movements. I kept my voice neutral. Policy, not punishment. I started eating dinner alone, usually after a long day, sitting at the small table with a Chick-fil-A bag and no screen on. No background noise. No commentary. Just quiet. The kind that forces people to hear themselves when they finally step into it. She filled her side of the silence differently. More Xbox noise at night. Louder laughs through walls. The smell of Bath and Body Works candles came back stronger, layered, like she was trying to override a presence that was already gone. Scent can't replace structure. It just lingers after. Midweek, I reviewed the lease with the same focus I use on safety codes. Terms. Exit clauses. Responsibilities. I emailed the management company from my phone while sitting in the truck, engine idling, the cab sealed off from the rest of the world. I didn't CC her. I didn't need permission to ask questions about a contract with my name on it. The reply came faster than expected. Clean options. Legal ones. No drama required. I forwarded her only what affected her portion. Nothing more. No explanation attached. That night, she stood in the doorway of the spare room again. This time she knocked. I didn't answer right away. When I did, I kept the door half closed. She said she felt like we were drifting too far. I told her roommates drift by definition. I watched the sentence land. She nodded slowly, like she was recalibrating a plan that suddenly had fewer exits. Over the next few days, boxes appeared in the corner of the living room. Not packed, just staged. She said she was reorganizing. I listed another item on eBay without looking up. By Friday, the apartment felt less like a home and more like a transition space. Neutral. Temporary. Exactly what she'd asked for. She just hadn't realized how cold temporary could be when someone stops waiting for you to come back. The thing about living in the same building is that distance becomes visible. I didn't follow her. I didn't check her phone. I didn't need proof the way people imagine proof. I already had the pattern. What I needed next was leverage, and leverage doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from timing. The delivery guy downstairs got comfortable. Comfort makes people sloppy. He started parking in guest spots instead of the street. Started buzzing our unit instead of hers when packages came in late. One afternoon, I crossed paths with him near the elevators. He looked past me at first, then did a double take when he recognized where I lived. His shoulders tightened. Recognition is always louder than guilt. I nodded once and kept walking. No threat, no curiosity, just confirmation that he now knew I existed as more than a closed door upstairs. That evening, she came home agitated. Not angry, disoriented. She said the building manager had asked a few questions. Routine stuff, she claimed. Parking complaints. Guest access. She laughed it off, but she burned a Bath and Body Works candle immediately after, like she needed backup air. I listened from the spare room, already aware of which systems flag irregular behavior. I hadn't filed a complaint. I didn't need to. Buildings run on compliance, not drama. When someone violates small rules often enough, attention finds them on its own. All I'd done was stop smoothing the edges. Her nights changed after that. Shorter absences, more phone checks, less laughter. The Xbox still ran in the background, but the volume dropped, like she was afraid silence might say something out loud. She started hovering near me when I cooked, asking neutral questions about schedules and groceries. I answered briefly. Roommates exchange logistics, not reassurance. I grabbed Chick-fil-A on my way home one night and ate it in the truck before going inside. The cab felt cleaner than the apartment. No scent, no noise, just the hum of the engine and the understanding that I could leave whenever I wanted. Inside, she was packing for real now. Not staging, folding, sorting, separating. She didn't announce it. She just moved differently, like someone preparing for an exit they hadn't planned emotionally. I listed the last shared item on eBay that same night and felt the space shift again. By the end of the week, the neighbor stopped buzzing our unit altogether. His door downstairs stayed closed more often. Structures collapse quietly when access is restricted. She noticed that too. She just didn't realize yet that none of it was about him anymore. It was about the fact that I wasn't available to negotiate my own absence. The shift became public without anyone raising their voice. It started with small absences she couldn't explain away. A missed family dinner she'd already committed to. A corporate mixer she arrived at alone after telling people I'd be there. When asked where I was, she said I had work. Then she said I wasn't feeling well. Then she stopped offering reasons at all. Silence travels faster than excuses. I stopped covering for her without ever saying I would. When her sister texted me directly one afternoon, asking if everything was okay, I replied hours later with a neutral answer. Busy week. No elaboration. No emojis. That message did more damage than any accusation could have. At home, the apartment felt watched. Not by me. By the absence of performance. She burned another Bath and Body Works candle one night, then blew it out halfway through, like even the scent felt too exposed. The Xbox stayed off. Noise wasn't helping anymore. She started rearranging her packing boxes again, this time with urgency, not organization, preparation. She hovered near the door when I came in, as if waiting for a reaction. I gave her none. I set my keys down, checked my phone, and went into the spare room. Distance doesn't need commentary. The social shift landed hardest when it wasn't initiated by me. A mutual friend mentioned, casually, that people were asking questions. Not accusations. Observations. They'd noticed I wasn't around. They'd noticed she seemed unsettled. Someone had joked, not unkindly, that it looked like we were already divorced. She laughed too quickly when she repeated that to me later. I didn't correct her. I didn't deny it. Roommates don't manage optics together. That weekend, I spent more time in the truck, parked in familiar places, engine off, windows down. I ate alone, sometimes with a Chick-fil-A bag balanced on the console, watching people move through their routines without me in them. It felt stable, predictable, mine. When I came home, she was on the phone in the bedroom, voice low, door closed. She didn't look up when I passed. Later, I noticed she'd moved some of her boxes closer to the door. Exit proximity matters when confidence drops. I listed nothing new on eBay that night. There was nothing left to reduce. The space was already defined. By Sunday evening, the apartment no longer felt like a shared environment. It felt like two temporary occupants waiting on different timelines. Hers was urgent. Mine was already complete. She had wanted to be seen as independent. What she didn't expect was how visible it would become when I stopped standing next to her. Isolation doesn't arrive loudly. It settles in when options quietly disappear. By the middle of the next week, she was home more often. Not relaxed. Anchored. She moved through the apartment like someone checking exits that no longer opened the way they used to. Her phone stayed in her hand, screen lighting up and dimming without satisfaction. Whatever had felt easy before now required effort, and effort made it less appealing. The spare room stayed closed. Not locked anymore. Just unnecessary. I'd already removed what I needed. The rest of the space existed without me in it. That seemed to bother her more than the door ever had. She tried presence instead of questions. Sitting closer. Lingering in shared areas. Folding laundry that wasn't hers. Small gestures meant to test whether proximity still worked. I acknowledged none of it. I wasn't cold. I was finished reacting. At night, the apartment went silent earlier. No Xbox noise. No background distractions. The absence of sound made everything sharper. Footsteps. Breathing. The soft click of her phone as messages went unanswered longer than she expected. I stayed in my routine, showered, read, slept. Stability is unsettling to people who rely on chaos to feel wanted. One evening, she cooked. Not a gesture of care. A test. She left the plate on the counter without saying anything. I came home later than usual, ate something quick I'd already picked up, and put the plate in the fridge untouched. Roommates don't perform intimacy through food. The next day, she rearranged the boxes again. This time closer to the door, aligned, intentional. Not panic. Acceptance. She asked if I thought it would be better if she stayed somewhere else for a while. Her tone was light, professional, like she was proposing a temporary reassignment. I told her she should do whatever made the most sense for her. That was the last piece of reassurance she expected to get. That night, the scent of Bath and Body Works didn't come back. The apartment smelled like nothing. Neutral. Vacant. Honest. I sat in the truck for a while before coming inside, watching the building lights flicker on unit by unit. Lives contained. Boundaries respected. I realized I felt calmer there than anywhere else. She packed through the weekend. Fully this time. No hovering. No checking my reaction. When she finished, she stood in the living room with nothing left behind her but empty space and choices she couldn't renegotiate. Isolation isn't punishment. It's what happens when someone realizes they negotiated themselves out of relevance. Confrontation didn't look like a fight. It looked like hesitation standing in a doorway. She waited until the apartment was almost empty. Boxes gone. Closets stripped down to hangers that clicked softly when the air moved. The space echoed in a way it never had before, like it was already forgetting us. She stood across from me, hands folded, posture careful, as if tone alone could reset the last few weeks. She didn't accuse. She didn't confess. She framed it the way she framed everything else, as concern. She said she felt like we'd stopped communicating. She said she didn't recognize us anymore. She said she didn't think this was what either of us wanted. Her voice stayed steady, but her eyes kept checking my face for movement, for any sign that the ground was still soft. I listened without interrupting, not because I was open to persuasion, but because I'd already finished deciding. When she stopped talking, the silence stretched long enough to make her uncomfortable. Silence is only threatening when you expect a response. I told her that roommates don't renegotiate terms after the agreement is in place. I kept it brief. No edge. No emphasis. Just fact. She blinked like she hadn't prepared for that sentence to exist. She shifted tactics then. Less corporate. More personal. She mentioned history. Effort. The idea that things had just gotten complicated, not broken. I watched her hands as she spoke. They were empty. No ring. No phone. Nothing to anchor her. I didn't remind her of the neighbor. I didn't bring up patterns or timing. I didn't need her to admit anything. Confessions are for people who still want closure together. I'd already closed my side. She asked what I wanted. Not angrily. Carefully. Like someone stepping onto thin ice. I told her I already had what I needed. Space. Clarity. Predictability. The things she'd said she wanted first. That answer landed harder than any accusation. She nodded slowly, absorbing the finality of it. She didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice. She just sat down on one of the last remaining boxes and stared at the floor, like she was replaying earlier moments with new context and realizing how many exits she'd ignored. Later that night, I grabbed something quick to eat on the way home and sat alone in the truck again, finishing the last of a Chick-fil-A meal without rushing. When I came back inside, she was gone. Not dramatically, just efficiently. The apartment held the quiet without strain. I slept better than I had in months. By the time morning came, there was nothing left to discuss. Her collapse didn't come with a dramatic call or a late-night knock. It arrived in fragments I didn't chase. At first, it showed up in the way people talked around her name. A mutual acquaintance mentioned, offhand, that she'd been staying with a friend longer than expected. Someone else said she'd been quieter at work, less certain, like she was waiting for approval that never came. No one framed it as a scandal. That was the worst part for her. There was no villain, no headline, no side to take. Just a gradual withdrawal of interest. I didn't check on her. I didn't ask questions. I focused on resetting the apartment the way I reset any space after turnover. I cleared the last shelf, replaced the linens, threw out the half-used Bath and Body Works candles that still smelled like a version of life that no longer applied. Sent his memory. I didn't need reminders. One evening, I found one of her forgotten items in a drawer. Nothing sentimental. Just something practical she must have missed in the rush. I held it for a second, then listed it on eBay without hesitation. Completion matters. Loose ends invite return. She tried reaching out once. Not directly. Through a mutual connection who casually asked if I'd be open to talking. The phrasing was careful, like they already knew the answer. I said I was busy, which was true. I was busy living in a structure that didn't require negotiation. The neighbor downstairs stopped appearing altogether. His routine broke. New delivery guy. New patterns. Temporary people always are. I felt nothing about it. He'd never been the issue. He'd just been the symptom of what happens when boundaries go undefined. Late one night, I sat alone in the apartment. No background noise, no Xbox hum, no overlapping schedules. Just the sound of the building working the way it was designed to. Pipes. Air. Stability. I realized I hadn't checked my phone in hours. There was nothing on it that mattered. She lost more than a place to live. She lost the version of herself that felt anchored. The one who could rename distance as strategy and expect safety to remain intact. Without someone absorbing the weight of decisions, everything felt heavier. I didn't feel victorious. I felt clear. When people talk about closure, they imagine a moment of understanding between two people. What they don't talk about is the quiet clarity that comes when someone else's collapse no longer requires your presence. By the time her absence became obvious to everyone else, it had already stopped being relevant to me. The ending didn't arrive with a goodbye. It arrived as routine. A week after she left, the apartment settled into its final state. Not empty. Finished. Every object had a place because nothing was waiting to be negotiated anymore. I adjusted the thermostat, reset the lighting, and close the spare room for good. Not locked, just unnecessary. Like a conversation that's already had its last sentence. I handled the paperwork the same way I handle any formal separation of systems. Clean, documented, quiet. No court dates, no raised voices. Just signatures, confirmations, and timelines that no longer overlapped. Legal clarity has a calming effect when emotions are no longer invited to participate. I stopped eating at the table she liked. Not out of spite, out of alignment. I grabbed dinner on my way home sometimes, ate it alone, and didn't rush. Chick-fil-A tasted the same every time. Predictable. No subtext. No expectations. Once, I saw her by accident. Across a parking lot near the building. She looked thinner. Not physically fragile. Structurally. Like someone who'd lost the framework that made decisions feel light. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did, and chose not to react. Either way, there was no pull. No instinct to wave. No urge to check if she was okay. That's the part people misunderstand. Walking away isn't an act. It's a condition. You don't announce it. You just stop showing up where you're not respected and let the absence speak in your place. Later that night, I drove without a destination for a while. The road open, the cab quiet, the sense of forward motion uninterrupted. I thought about how easily language can be used to soften hard choices. How words like temporary and space can disguise exits if someone else is willing to hold the door open. I hadn't held the door. I'd simply stepped aside. She wanted safety without intimacy, structure without accountability, a body nearby without a presence that required honesty. When she said we should just be roommates for now, she thought she was downgrading the relationship. She didn't realize she was redefining the rules. My roommates don't sleep in my bed, and I don't stay where respect becomes optional. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.